Experts at the COP29 summit have for the first time discussed the climate impact of jet condensation trails. The water vapor in them forms artificial clouds that prevent heat entering into space. Their impact on global warming could be as big as that caused by the burning of fossil fuels by the aviation industry. Let's get a better sense of the submissions being made by Team South Africa. Bring in our guest, Maesela Kekana, who's the Chief Negotiator and DDG of Climate Change and Air Quality with the Department of Fisheries and Environment. Mr. Kekana, thanks for your time. Welcome to the SABC News Channel. Great to have you with us. Let's perhaps begin by just understanding South Africa's approach to COP29, since this is our first time having a discussion about the summit. A lot of the discourse in the lead up to the gathering had been around funding specifically for developing nations in order to see through what we call a just transition. Is that also our focus?
Correct, Ayand, and good day to you and your listeners. South Africa's approach to this conference is based on the fact that we see this as an implementation COP, or the COP that should help us with the implementation of our own climate action. And to this end, we are focusing on specific key issues such as the new finance goal, but also issues around support on building resilience and support on reducing greenhouse gas emissions and agriculture and so forth and so forth. So that is primarily our focus.
Yeah, and I suppose there's going to be questions around what that practically actually means for a country like ours, you know, given just our size, perhaps even the scale of our economy. In many instances, it almost feels like countries like South Africa are at the mercy of what the powerhouses decide at a summit like this. Is that how you'd characterize even just our ability to bargain at COP29?
Not quite. Look, we are the middle income country, so it means we are still yet to fully develop, and therefore this presents opportunities in terms of decarbonization and green development, new industries and so forth. So people view us as a country where they can do some investments, particularly the private sector in the green industry. So we are in a good position. You would know that a lot of our neighbors are what we call the least developed countries with very little industrialization happening there. So for countries such as South Africa, Brazil, China, and India, there's always a particular interest when it comes to investments in the green space. So we are pitching ourselves in that light and trying to look at things such as cooperations, be it with the Global North or South-South cooperation. So we approach it from that perspective.
Critics believe those in the global north are not playing enough of a role that they can. In fact, almost creating an expectation that the global south would be the first to transition, as it were, whilst they continue growing their economies by relying on fossil fuels more indefinitely than not. What's your response to something like that? You know, this idea that, in fact, it almost feels like the powerhouses are disingenuous about their commitment to fighting climate change.
No, that's correct, and that's what we've been saying to them for the last 4 or 5 years, and there's data that support that particular statement. If you look at investments, for example, in oil and gas industry, it's in the global north. There's quite a lot of number of African countries that have discovered new oil, but there are no investments in those areas. But you look at the trajectory of investments from in the global north themselves, it's quite shocking. Hence, you are seeing the level of emissions not declining globally speaking. You are seeing this increase in emissions despite the effort that we are putting in, particularly from the global south. It's simply because the global north is not coming to the party.
In fact, the UN Secretary General being quoted as saying that 2024 is on course to becoming one of the hottest countries, or hottest years on record, I beg your pardon. Where does that then leave a country like South Africa, Mr. Kekana? I mean, if it feels like those who are best placed to really make a difference aren't playing their part, how does a country like South Africa then commit to the nobility of a just energy transition without actually compromising what people say is our potential economic growth by continuing with the kind of energy generation that we currently have?
Yeah, look, everybody has made a commitment, right? Not just South Africa or the global south, even the global north, they've made commitments. The issue is that the commitments that they put on the table are not sufficient. Hence, you are continuing to see these increases in greenhouse gas emissions. So our push in these negotiations has always been to say, under the convention and the Paris Agreement, you are expected to show leadership and to take that leadership and to support us, only support us with our own transition. So we are demanding that leadership from the global north. Of course, they tell us that no, we made commitments and these are nationally determined and we've met our targets, but we continue to push them to be more ambitious. We can, if we all set low targets, then there's no point, right, in having these sort of targets.
Sure. It'd be remiss not to speak about what's currently taking place in the US. Of course, the White House changing hands and Donald Trump's approach to climate change is well documented. We're all waiting to see what he's going to do or say next. How much of that development has featured in the discussions that take place? Because we know, of course, the US has been a major funder of some of these initiatives, for lack of a better term. And there are real fears that Donald Trump will do good on his promise to pull that funding.
I'm sure he will. I mean, all of us know what he did last time. He simply did not pay. The philanthropists in the United States had to take that share of the U.S. contribution, particularly to the Convention Secretariat. So we don't expect anything less. We expect him to go in the same direction. But look, that has brought all of us together, both the global south and the global north, to say we need more solidarity now. We need to show unity. We need to increase international cooperation. And that for us as South Africa is good, because now we can bring on the table issues that are really affecting or are going to impact us. Things such as carbon border tax adjustments that the European Union plan to implement starting 2026. So we're saying, okay, if we are talking solidarity, let's talk about that. How can we find a way to work around that? And there seems to be some positive movements where people want to engage. So the point is that the appointment of Donald Trump has unleashed a certain type of solidarity and cooperation among both global north and global south.
All right, and hopefully that will result in actual change. But Maesela Kekana, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us.